The doors of the Oak Ridge Police Department been slammed open, like they'd been kicked by fate itself. Rain poured outside, the wind howling like a warning, and there, in the doorway, too mud-streaked, bleeding, his sides heaving soot, stood a German shepherd. His fur was matted with dirt and blood, his paws torn raw. But that wasn't the shocking part. Strapped to his back with strips of torn fabric was the limp, lifeless body of a little girl. Her hair was tangled, her face pale, her arms dangling like broken branches. Gasps filled the room. Deputy Larson lunged forward, but the dog snarled, teeth bared, even as his legs trembled. He wasn't letting anyone near her. Not yet, not until he knew she was safe. Sheriff Cooper stood frozen. "That's Jack Mitchell's girl," he whispered. Emma, 8 years old, missing for 72 hours. The paramedics rushed in, cutting her free, working fast. But the dog's amber eyes never left her face, not as blood pooled around his paws, not as his breath turned ragged. Pre-trained tranquilizer darts hadn't stopped him. So what had he survived to bring her here? Then, impossibly, the dog stood, shaking, bleeding, but standing. And when he turned toward the door, his message was clear. "Follow me." Because Hunter wasn't just a dog, he was her protector. And this was only the beginning. 3 years before that stormy night at the police station, a little girl with sad eyes walked into the Oak Ridge Animal Shelter. The place smelled of disinfectant and nervous dogs barking in their cages. Volunteers watched as Emma Mitchell, just 5 years old at the time, moved past the yapping puppies and the fluffy lapdogs everyone else cooed over. She didn't stop until she reached the very last kennel at the back, the one where they kept the dogs no one wanted. Inside sat a German shepherd, his fur dull, his body covered in scars. A jagged notch marked one ear, and his amber eyes held a depth of pain that made even the shelter workers uneasy. He didn't wag his tail, he didn't bark, he just sat there, silent, like he'd given up on the world. The sign on his cage read, "Hunter, 5 years old, not good with strangers." But Emma didn't care. She knelt in front of the kennel, her small fingers curling around the bars. The dog lifted his head, just slightly, and for the first time in months he looked directly at someone. "This one," Emma said, her voice quiet but firm. Her father, Jack, sighed. He was a broken man, his shoulders heavy with grief. His wife, Emma's mother, had been murdered a year before, and since then he'd been drowning in whiskey and silence. The last thing he wanted was a dog, especially one that looked like it had been through a war. "Sweet Emma, sweetheart, he's not a family dog," Jack said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Jack and I, look at him. He's been hurt. He might not even like kids." But Emma didn't move. She just kept staring into the dog's eyes. "His eyes are sad," she whispered, "like mine." Something in those words made Jack pause. He looked at Hunter again, really looked, and for the first time he saw past the scars. He saw the quiet intelligence in the dog's gaze, the way he watched Emma like she was the only person in the world who mattered. The shelter worker hesitated. "He was surrendered 6 months ago," she explained. "His previous owner, well, let's just say he didn't have a good life. We think he was a police dog once, but something went wrong. He's skittish, doesn't trust easily." Emma didn't care. She reached her small hand toward the cage and everyone tensed, except Hunter. Slowly, carefully, the dog leaned forward and pressed his nose against her fingers through the bars. Jack's breath caught. That was the moment everything changed. Hunter came home with them that day, but it wasn't easy. At first, Jack barely acknowledged the dog. He was too wrapped up in his own pain, too lost in memories of his wife. Sarah had been the one who loved animals, who brought strays home and nursed them back to health. Now she was gone, and the sight of Hunter, another wounded soul, only made the ache worse. But Emma? She adored him. She brushed his fur every night, whispering stories to him like he understood every word. She shared her snacks with him under the dinner table, even when Jack scolded her. And when nightmares woke her screaming, it wasn't her father she called for. It was Hunter. The dog would leap onto her bed, curling around her like a living shield, his warmth driving the bad dreams away. Jack watched it all from a distance, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. Then, one night, everything came to a head. It was the anniversary of Sarah's death. Jack had drunk more than usual, his grief a raw, open wound. When he stumbled into the living room and saw Hunter lying on Sarah's favorite blanket, something inside him snapped. "Get out," he slurred, grabbing the dog's collar. "You don't belong here." Hunter didn't fight. He just looked at Jack with those knowing eyes that seemed to say, I miss her too. But Jack wasn't in the mood for understanding. He dragged Hunter to the car, drove to the shelter, and left him there without a second glance. Emma was devastated. She cried for days, refused to eat. Sat by the window, waiting for a dog she didn't know was never coming back. And then, a week later, Jack woke up to scratching at the front door. When he opened it, Hunter stood there, muddy, exhausted, but alive. He'd escaped the shelter, crossed miles of busy roads, found his way home. Emma came running, tears streaming down her face as she buried her hands in his fur. "You came back." Jack stood frozen in the doorway, his heart pounding, because in that moment he realized something. Hunter wasn't just a dog, he was family, and family doesn't give up on each other. That day on, Hunter never left Emma's side. He walked her to school every morning, sitting patiently until she disappeared into the building. He waited for her at the same spot every afternoon, tail wagging the second he spotted her. And at night, when the house was quiet, he'd curl up beside her bed, standing guard like the soldier he once was. Jack started to change too, slowly, painfully, but surely. He put the whiskey down, started talking to Emma again, even found himself scratching Hunter behind the ears when he thought no one was looking. But none of them knew then what was coming. None of them knew that one day Hunter would have to prove just how far he was willing to go to protect the little girl who saved him, because in 3 years' time Emma would vanish without a trace. And Hunter, he would tear the world apart to bring her home. It started like any ordinary Tuesday. Jack dropped Emma off at school with the same rushed kiss on the top of her head, the same promise he made every morning. "And see you at 3, kiddo." In the back seat of the truck, Hunter sat alert, his tail giving a single thump against the leather as Emma waved goodbye through the window. She blew him a kiss, their little ritual, before skipping toward the school doors. Mrs. Winters, her teacher, would later say how Emma had paused to look back one last time at the dog watching her from the truck. "And you could see it," the teacher would tell police, her voice breaking. And that dog was her whole world. At 3:15 p.m., Jack pulled into the school pickup lane, his boots crunching on gravel as he stepped out. The playground was empty, no laughing children, no Emma. His stomach dropped before his brain could process why. He checked his watch. Maybe she was late coming out? But then he saw the school secretary hurrying toward him, her face pale. "Oh, Mr. Mitchell," she said, voice tight with confusion. "Emma was picked up over an hour ago." "There was a family emergency?" The world tilted. Jack's hands started shaking before the rest of his body caught up. "What family?" he demanded, his voice too loud. "It's just me. Who took my daughter?" Within the hour, the Oak Ridge Police Department was swarming with activity. Sheriff Cooper coordinated search teams while Jack paced the linoleum floors, his boots leaving muddy streaks. Every time the station doors opened, his head snapped up, but it was never Emma. In the corner of the room, Hunter stood rigid, his ears pricked forward, a low whine building in his throat. The dog kept straining toward the door, his nails clicking against the floor like Morse code. "Take me outside. Let me find her." Agent Cassidy Reynolds from the FBI arrived just after sunset, her raincoat dripping onto the floor. She took one look at Hunter, at the way the dog's gaze kept darting toward the dense woods behind the school, and knelt in front of him. "He's trying to tell us something," she murmured. But Sheriff Cooper waved her off. "And we've got real search dogs coming. That one's just a pet." The dismissal made Jack's blood boil. He grabbed Hunter's collar, yanking him back as the dog tried again to bolt toward the trees. "Stop it! Stop!" Jack snarled, his fear twisting into anger. "You're not helping." Hunter flinched but didn't back down, his amber eyes locked onto Jack's, blazing with a frustration that mirrored Jack's own. "For a heartbeat, man and dog understood each other perfectly, and you're not listening to me, and she's running out of time." That night, after hours of useless searching, Jack returned home alone. The house was too quiet. No Emma singing off-key in the shower. no hunter padding after her like a shadow. Because Jack, in his desperation to do something Thaden, had made the worst mistake of his life. He'd locked Hunter in the laundry room before leaving to join the search parties. The dog's howl started at midnight. Neighbors 3 houses away would later say it sounded like a wild animal dying. Jack, stumbling home drunk on grief and exhaustion, found Hunter covered in foam, his claws shredded from scratching at the door. The moment Jack turned the knob, the dog shot past him, not toward food or water, but straight to Sarah's old study, the room Jack hadn't entered since the murder. Hunter slammed his body against the closed door, his bark sharp as gunshots. "What is wrong with you?" Jack roared, his voice cracking. He reached for the whiskey bottle on the counter and knocked it over. The sharp, sour smell flooded the kitchen. Hunter recoiled, but he didn't look away. And in that moment, Jack saw something in the dog's face he hadn't seen in years, in disappointment. The phone rang. It was Agent Reynolds. "Jack," she said, her voice tense. "Until we found Emma's backpack near Miller's Creek. There's blood on it." When Jack turned around, the front door was wide open. Hunter was gone. Hunter didn't stop to rest, didn't stop to lick his torn paws or drink from the icy creek water. He ran through brambles that sliced his flanks, through streams that numbed his legs, through miles of wilderness where the scent of Emma grew fainter with every hour. The microchip embedded under his skin, the one Agent Reynolds had secretly activated, pinged his location every few minutes, a blinking dot moving steadily away from civilization. By dawn, Hunter had reached Devil's Backbone. The locals told stories about this place, about old mining tunnels that collapsed on careless hikers, about caves that went straight down into darkness. Hunter didn't care about legends. He only cared about the faint, fading trace of Emma's fear lingering in the air, and then he heard it, a whimper, not from the woods, from underground. Hunter's nose led him to a bunker hidden beneath rotted logs. The metal door was sealed shut, but at the bottom, where rust had eaten through the frame, there was a gap, just wide enough for a desperate dog to press his muzzle against. "Hunter?" Emma's voice was so small, so broken, but it sent electricity through the dog's body. She was alive. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered, her fingers wiggling through the gap to brush his wet nose. Her skin was freezing. What happened next would later be pieced together from Emma's tearful account. Hunter stayed with her for hours, his presence the only thing keeping her from breaking. She told him about the man who took her, about the cologne that smelled exactly like the one from the night her mother died, about the whispered plans to unmove her at midnight. And then, as footsteps echoed down the corridor, Hunter did the unthinkable. He left her, not to abandon her, to save her. The ventilation shaft was barely wider than Hunter's shoulders. He had to army crawl through decades of spiderwebs and rat droppings, his injured paws scraping against rusted metal. Somewhere ahead a guard laughed. In Blackwood once or gone by midnight, and the name meant nothing to Hunter. But the scent, that chemical, cloying cologne, that he remembered. It was the same stench that had clung to Sarah's killer. Hunter's lips peeled back in a silent snarl. When the guard entered Emma's cell minutes later, he never saw the shadow detach itself from the wall, never saw the flash of teeth before 90 pounds of fury slammed into his chest. The gun went off, once, twice, but Hunter didn't flinch. He fought like a demon, buying Emma every second he could. And when she finally scrambled through the high window to freedom, when she sobbed, "Come with me," Hunter made his choice. He couldn't fit through the gap, but he could make sure no one followed her. As Emma vanished into the trees, Hunter turned to face the armed men running toward him. He didn't run. He charged. The moment Emma slipped through that narrow bunker window and disappeared into the night, Hunter knew two things with absolute certainty. She was running for her life, and he would never see her again if he didn't do the impossible. The gunshots still ringing in his ears, the taste of the guard's blood still fresh in his mouth, Hunter turned away from the window and faced the darkened corridor. 3 armed men were coming. He could hear their boots pounding against concrete, their shouts bouncing off the walls as they realized the girl was gone. Hunter's body screamed at him to rest. His lungs burned, his paws left bloody smears on the floor. and the bullet graze along his ribs sent sharp jolts of pain with every breath. But none of that mattered. Emma was out there alone in the woods, and these men would hunt her down like an animal if he didn't stop them. So Hunter did what any soldier would do. He set an ambush. The first man rounded the corner with his gun raised, scanning the empty hallway. He never looked down. Hunter hit him like a freight train, sinking his teeth into the man's thigh and twisting with all his remaining strength. The scream was deafening. The second man fired wildly, the bullet ricocheting off the metal walls as Hunter ducked behind a stack of crates. He could hear them shouting, "It's just a damn dog!" But they didn't understand. Hunter wasn't a just anything. He was Emma's protector, Sarah's last gift to her family. And tonight he was death itself. When the third man tried to flank him, Hunter feigned injury, letting out a pitiful whine as he limped into view. The man lowered his guard for half a second. That was all Hunter needed. He launched himself straight for the man's throat. They went down in a tangle of limbs and snarls, the gun skittering across the floor. Hunter didn't let go until the man stopped moving. Then, with the last of his strength, he dragged the unconscious guard back into Emma's empty cell and slammed the door shut with his body, wedging it closed. It wouldn't hold them forever, but it would buy Emma time. Now came the hard part. Hunter staggered back to the ventilation shaft, the one he'd crawled through to reach Emma. His body protested every movement, but he forced himself back into that tight, suffocating darkness. The metal edges tore fresh wounds in his shoulders as he squeezed through. Somewhere ahead, Emma was out there in the freezing night, wearing nothing but a thin t-shirt, running blind through unfamiliar woods. Hunter had to find her before hypothermia did, before the men chasing her did, before the wilderness swallowed her whole. Outside, the cold hit him like a punch. The bunker was hidden deep in Devil's Backbone, miles from the nearest road. Hunter lifted his nose to the wind, searching for that one precious scent among thousands. Emma's strawberry shampoo, the faint trace of her sweat, the unmistakable signature of her fear. There, due east, he took off running. The forest was a nightmare of shadows and traps. Thorns ripped at his already raw paws. Ice-cold streams numbed his legs as he plunged through them without hesitation. Every few hundred yards, Hunter would stop, ears pricked, nose working overtime to adjust to Emma's changing trail. She was moving erratically, no surprise for a terrified child, but she was heading downhill, toward the creek. Smart girl. Running water would throw off most trackers, but Hunter wasn't most trackers. He found her just past dawn. Emma was curled under the roots of a massive oak tree, her arms wrapped around her knees, her breath coming in shallow gasps. When she saw Hunter, her whole body convulsed with silent sobs. "You came back," she choked out, her fingers burying themselves in his fur. Hunter wanted to collapse right there, to let the darkness take him, but he couldn't. Not yet. Emma was shaking violently, early stages of hypothermia, and worse, in the distance, dogs were barking. They'd sent trackers after her. Hunter nudged Emma with his nose until she stood on wobbly legs. Then he did something he'd never done before. He grabbed the sleeve of her shirt gently in his teeth and started leading her, not back toward town, not toward the roads where they'd be easily spotted, but deeper into the wilderness, toward the one place Hunter knew they might find help, the Mitchell family cabin. It was 15 miles away. 15 miles of rugged terrain with an injured, exhausted child and armed men hunting them. Hunter's vision blurred at the edges. His lungs felt full of broken glass, but he kept moving, one painful step at a time, using his body to shield Emma from the worst of the underbrush. When she stumbled, he was there to brace her. When she cried, he licked her face until she giggled weakly. And when the barking grew louder, Hunter made his first real choice since this nightmare began. He left her, just for a few minutes, just long enough to circle back and lay a false trail straight off a cliff edge. The tracking dogs went crazy at the precipice, their handlers convinced Emma had fallen. Hunter watched from the trees as the search party wasted precious hours securing ropes to search the ravine below. By the time they realized their mistake, Hunter was already back at Emma's side, nudging her onward. They walked for 2 days. Emma talked to keep herself awake, her voice thin but steady. She told Hunter about the man who took her, how he'd smiled at her outside school, how he'd said Daddy was hurt and needed her right away. She described the bunker, the other kids she'd heard crying in nearby rooms before they were taken away. And then, in a whisper so quiet Hunter almost missed it, she said the words that changed everything. The bad man smelled like the one who hurt Mommy. Hunter froze, his ears flattened against his skull. Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. The cologne, the way Emma's kidnapping mirrored Sarah's murder, the name Blackwood he'd heard the guards mention. This wasn't random. Emma had been targeted deliberately, and if that was true, a new sound cut through his thoughts. Engines, voices. Hunter bared his teeth, ready to fight again, until he recognized one voice shouting Emma's name. Jack. The moment Emma saw her father sprinting through the trees with Agent Reynolds and a team of paramedics, she collapsed. Hunter tried to stay upright, tried to keep watch in case it was a trick, but his legs finally gave out. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Jack Mitchell, the man who'd once thrown him away, cradling Emma in one arm and reaching for Hunter with the other, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Good boy. Oh God, good boy." Then everything went black. When Hunter woke 3 days later in a veterinary hospital, his first instinct was to panic. Where was Emma? But then he felt the small weight pressed against his side and heard the steady beep of monitors. Emma was curled next to him in the oversized kennel, her fingers tangled in his fur, her face finally peaceful. Across the room, Jack Mitchell slept upright in a chair, one hand resting on Hunter's paw, like he was afraid the dog might disappear. Agent Reynolds stood in the doorway, holding up an evidence bag with a bloody collar inside, Hunter's collar. "We found something sewn into the lining," she said quietly. "Your wife was even smarter than we thought, Jack. She left us a map. But that's a story for another time. For now, in this quiet hospital room, there was just this, a little girl, her father, and the dog who'd crossed hell itself to bring them back together." The veterinary hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Hunter lay on his side, his ribs rising and falling in shallow breaths, his body a map of bandages and stitches. Emma hadn't left his side for 3 days, sleeping curled against him in the oversized kennel, her small fingers always touching some part of him, his ear, his paw, the familiar scar along his shoulder. She needed the contact as much as he did, proof that they'd both made it out alive. On the 4th morning, Agent Reynolds walked in holding a manila folder. Her face was grim. "We found the bunker," she told Jack, keeping her voice low so Emma wouldn't wake. "Empty now, but the evidence is all there. Blackwood's operation was bigger than we thought." She hesitated, then dropped the bombshell. "He's still out there, Jack, and he knows Emma can identify him." Hunter's ears twitched. He'd been pretending to sleep, but at those words his eyes opened fully. The name Blackwood sent a ripple of recognition through him. Not just because of the guards at the bunker, but because he'd heard it before, whispered in Sarah's voice late at night when she thought no one was listening. Jack's hands clenched into fists. "So what now? We just wait for him to come after her again?" Reynolds shook her head. "We're putting you in protective custody, all 3 of you." That's when the heart monitor attached to Hunter spiked. Emma stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Daddy?" Jack was at her side instantly. "It's okay, baby, we're just—" The window shattered. Hunter moved faster than pain should have allowed. He was on his feet and lunging before the first shard of glass hit the floor, his body slamming into Emma's just as the gunshot rang out. The bullet meant for her head buried itself in the wall behind them. Chaos erupted. Reynolds had her weapon drawn, shouting into her radio. Jack threw himself over Emma as a second shot took out the overhead light. Hunter didn't hesitate. He bolted for the door, ignoring the way his stitches pulled apart, the fresh warmth of blood soaking through his bandages. The shooter was outside, on the roof maybe, and Hunter was the only one fast enough to reach him. The hallway was pandemonium, nurses screaming, agents running, alarms blaring. Hunter wove through the legs of panicked staff, his nose leading him toward the stairwell. The metallic scent of gunpowder was fresh. So was the faint trace of that same cologne from the bunker. Blackwood had come himself. The roof access door was slightly ajar. Hunter pushed through, his paws slipping on the wet gravel. The storm that had been threatening all day was finally breaking, rain coming down in sheets. 20 yards away, a figure in black crouched near the edge, reassembling a sniper rifle. Hunter didn't growl, didn't bark. He attacked. Blackwood barely had time to turn before 90 pounds of furious muscle hit him in the chest. They crashed onto the rooftop, the rifle skittering out of reach. Hunter went for the throat, but Blackwood was ready. He brought his arm up just in time, the thick Kevlar sleeve saving his life as Hunter's teeth clamped down. "You," Blackwood spat, his face twisted in recognition. "Sarah's damn dog." He grabbed a knife from his belt. "Should have killed you with her." The blade came down. Hunter felt it slice across his shoulder, hot and sharp, but he didn't let go. Couldn't, because now he knew for certain this was the man who'd murdered Sarah. The same cologne, the same voice Emma had described. This ends today, Hunter thought, and redoubled his efforts. They rolled dangerously close to the roof's edge. 5 stories below, Blackwood stood, wiping blood from his face. "Stupid animal," he muttered, reaching for his fallen knife. "You should have stayed dead." Then the roof access door burst open. Jack Mitchell charged out like a man possessed, his police-issue Glock steady in both hands. "Don't move," he shouted over the wind. Blackwood laughed. "Or what? You'll shoot me? You're a drunk, Mitchell." A washed up, Jack fired. The bullet took Blackwood in the knee. He went down with a howl. Hunter saw his chance, every injury, every ounce of pain. None of it mattered as he gathered his strength and lunged one last time. His teeth closed around Blackwood's wrist just as the man reached for the knife again. There was a sickening crunch, a scream. Then the knife was skittering across the rooftop, and Jack was there, his foot on Blackwood's chest, his gun pressed between the man's eyes. "It's over," Jack said, his voice terrifyingly calm. Below them the building was surrounded. FBI, SWAT, local police. Blackwood's men had either fled or been arrested, but Hunter barely registered any of it. His body was shutting down, the adrenaline fading, the blood loss too severe. The last thing he saw before collapsing was Emma bursting onto the roof, her small face streaked with tears, her arms reaching for him as she screamed his name. Then nothing. Hunter woke to sunlight, and pain, so much pain, but also warmth. Emma's head resting on his uninjured side, Jack's hand on his paw, the steady beep of machines confirming what he already knew. He'd survived. Again. Agent Reynolds appeared in the doorway, a file in her hands. "Blackwood singing like a canary," she said without preamble. "Turns out he was running an entire trafficking ring through his charities." "Your wife had the evidence, Jack. She was days from going public when she didn't need to finish." Jack nodded, his thumb absently stroking Hunter's fur. "And Emma? Safe, thanks to him." Reynolds nodded at Hunter. "The doctors say he shouldn't have lived through that rooftop fight, let alone the bunker. It's like he refused to die until he knew she was safe." Hunter huffed weakly. That was exactly what he'd done. Emma stirred, her sleepy eyes meeting his. "You came back," she whispered, just like she had in the woods. Hunter licked her fingers. "Always." Jack cleared his throat. "There's something else." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small waterproof case, the kind hunters use for ammunition. "We found this buried in the yard. Sarah must have. She trained Hunter to hide it." Inside was a USB drive. On it, everything Sarah Mitchell had uncovered about Blackwood's operation. Names, dates, locations. Enough to put him away forever. Emma hugged Hunter tighter. He was protecting it the whole time. Hunter closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling him under again. But this time it was okay. Emma was safe. Jack was sober. Sarah's killer was in chains. His job was done. Except, as sleep took him, Hunter felt Emma's lips brush his ear as she whispered the words that would change everything all over again. "I think there's more, boy. I think Mom hid other treasures, too. But that's a story for another day." The farmhouse was quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, painting golden stripes across the floor where Hunter lay stretched out, his fur warm and his belly full. His wounds had healed, though the scars would always remain, a roadmap of everything he'd survived. Emma sat cross-legged beside him, carefully braiding wildflowers into his collar, while Jack flipped pancakes at the stove. It was a perfect, ordinary moment, the kind of moment they'd all fought for. But Hunter couldn't relax, not completely. Emma's whispered words from the hospital still echoed in his mind. I think Mom hid other treasures too." And he tried to ignore it, to enjoy this hard-won peace, but the truth was she was right. Sarah had trained him too well for there to only be one hidden cache. The question was, where were the others, and what would happen when they found them? The answer came sooner than expected. Jack's phone rang just as he set the pancakes on the table. Agent Reynolds' name flashed on the screen. "Put it on speaker," Emma said, her fingers stilling in Hunter's fur. Reynolds' voice was tense. "Jack, we need you at the station. Blackwood's lawyers are pushing for a plea deal. Says he'll give up his entire network in exchange for reduced charges." Jack's knuckles whitened around the spatula. "After what he did to Sarah, to Emma, that's not all." Reynolds hesitated. He claimed Sarah wasn't just investigating him. She was part of some bigger story. Something that would... A loud crash interrupted her. Then static. "Reynolds?" Jack's voice sharpened. The line was dead. Hunter was on his feet before anyone else moved, his nose working overtime. Something was wrong. He could smell it in the air, the same electric tension that came before thunderstorms, before gunfire. Emma's eyes met his. "Hunter knows something." Jack grabbed his keys. "Then we're going to the station, now." They piled into the truck, Hunter riding shotgun with his nose pressed to the window, scanning for threats. The drive to town should have been peaceful. Rolling hills, grazing cattle, the occasional mailbox whipping past. But Hunter's hackles never lowered. The police station was chaos when they arrived. Officers ran in every direction, radios crackling with overlapping voices. Reynolds met them at the door, her shirt sleeve torn and a bruise forming on her cheek. "Blackwood's gone," she said without preamble. "What?" Jack's voice cracked. "How?" "Someone inside helped him, took out our comms, killed the power. He walked right out the back door." Reynolds' gaze flicked to Emma, then back to Jack. "He left a message for you, said, 'The dog knows where the rest of it is.'" Hunter's blood ran cold, because suddenly he did know. Sarah hadn't just hidden evidence in the yard or the pond. There was one more place, somewhere so obvious, so personal, no one would ever think to look there. The cemetery. Sarah Mitchell's grave was simple. A polished granite headstone under a young oak tree, her name etched beside dates that ended too soon. Hunter had only been here once before, the day they buried her. Now, as he stood panting in the afternoon heat, the pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. Emma knelt beside the headstone, running her fingers over the engraving. "What are we looking for, boy?" Hunter didn't hesitate. He went straight to the base of the oak tree and started digging. Jack tried to pull him back. "Hunter, no." Then the metal hit his claws. Buried 6 inches down was a rusted ammunition box, the kind soldiers use in the field. Jack pried it open with shaking hands. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, was a notebook. Sarah's handwriting filled every page. Jack's breath caught. Its names, dozens of them, politicians, cops, judges, all connected to Blackwood. Reynolds paled as she flipped through. This isn't just a story. It's a bomb waiting to go off. A twig snapped behind them. Hunter spun, teeth bared, just in time to see Blackwood step from the trees. He looked worse for wear, his expensive suit replaced by prison scrubs, his face gaunt, but the gun in his hand was steady. "Took you long enough," he sneered. "I've been waiting hours." Emma gasped. Jack shoved her behind him. Reynolds reached for her sidearm. Blackwood fired. The bullet hit Reynolds in the shoulder, spinning her to the ground. Jack lunged, but Blackwood cocked the gun again. The notebook, Mitchell. Hand it over." Hunter didn't wait for commands. He didn't growl or bark. He simply moved. But Blackwood was ready. The second bullet caught Hunter mid-leap. He crashed to the ground, pain exploding through his chest. Somewhere, Emma was screaming. Jack was shouting. But all Hunter could focus on was the warm wetness spreading beneath him, the way his legs wouldn't obey when he tried to stand. Blackwood loomed over him, gun raised for the kill shot. "Should have put you down years." A new gunshot rang out. Blackwood staggered, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He turned, stunned, to see Agent Reynolds on one knee, her good arm extended, smoke curling from her service weapon. Then he collapsed. The vet said it was a miracle. The bullet had missed Hunter's heart by less than an inch. Another half-second, and he'd have been gone. But Hunter hadn't survived this long to die now, not when Emma still needed him. 3 weeks later, they gathered again at Sarah's grave, this time in peace. The notebook had sparked investigations across 3 states, dozens of arrests. Blackwood's empire was crumbling by the hour. Emma placed a fresh bouquet by the headstone. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. Jack cleared his throat. "Actually, Hunter did." He knelt beside the dog, scratching behind his ears the way Sarah used to. "You kept your promise to her, didn't you, boy? You protected us." Hunter leaned into the touch. Because Jack was right, but he was also wrong. It wasn't just Hunter who'd saved them. It was Sarah's love, woven into every hidden clue. It was Jack's courage, finally waking after years asleep. It was Emma's unshakable faith that her dog would always come for her. And as they walked back to the truck, Emma swinging between Jack and Reynolds, Hunter limping happily at their heels, the last piece of Sarah's legacy became clear. This wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning. That's the magic of animals, isn't it? They don't just share our homes, they change our lives. Hunter's story is extraordinary, but I'll bet yours is too. Drop it in the comments. Let's celebrate those everyday heroes with wagging tails and whiskers. Love, loyalty, never giving up. That's the real lesson. Dear friend, thank you for watching. Leave a comment below and tell us how this touched your heart. Subscribe to our channel, Tales of Paws and People, to help us spread more stories of grace, healing, and hope. And may God bless every soul watching this. May you find warmth in the storm and light in the silence.